So they want to act like the number two is a coward, is a punk number, just because it's even doesn't mean that it's a coward or a punk number because the number two is gonna push you. I've been doing this research, man, for just getting ready for all these new videos and stuff that I want to drop and information, just period, that I want to put out over the internet. And the number two will challenge you because see the number one is like when you come up with an idea, it sounds good to you and to people that may be just like you, your best friends and people that always agree with everything that you say anyway. Or people that disagree, but you don't really care if they disagree because they're like your family and stuff like that. See, that's like the number one energy. Number two is when you present your idea to someone that can potentially not only shoot down your idea, but take away your self esteem. So you got to have courage when you're putting out this information and doing these rituals. Um, you have to be a god. See, these rituals are for gods. See, a lot of people don't really agree with rituals and using rituals, or what I consider rituals. Some people call hustling. I got to make this clear. I consider that money rituals personally, from my experiences and being, a hustler and all of that. I consider that money rituals, and it's a talent. It's a gift. And when you putting together these maps and these rituals, you are a creator. At that point, you are a god. You are making something. You are a maker by hand. And that's a whole economy. And what I've learned is that, and this is what took me, I guess, supposedly or hopefully to the next level, because we did make a profit, by the way, today. So I'm pretty happy about that. We turned the profit over on some of the stocks that we invested in. Shout out to the people insiders that follow some of my trade deals and things that I do. But you have your hand. You see that's an economy that has not been tapped into. Everything that you make with your hand is considered a unit in this form of economics that I teach. And see, in the corporate world, they use. I mean, it's not about wrong or right. I'm just giving you a different example. See, in the corporate world, they they can essentially capitalize off of someone's effort, off of someone else's effort. So they act as, in the corporate world, they more so act as a third party, brokering deals and doing deals for groups of people and like many groups of people and things of that nature. However, they have no hands. So at some point, they only can function, from what I understand, in the credit realm. Even when they think that they're functioning in the realm of mints and things of that nature and commodities, they're still locked into the credit aspect of the commodity. And with this, see, we had this man, his name was John Hanson, right? He was like one of the first presidents. And his name was coded, really, actually, because in his name you see the term hand or hand. And that's very important because his hand is his. This is a something that's used that actually goes back to the kings and things of that nature, because they would always use a hand to measure something, a standard or a currency or any type of commodity. You needed some form of a hand or a measuring stick to start your measure from, because at some point the count can go out. What I mean by that is that if you're counting units like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at some point you may lose count. And this is where the hand comes into play at. You may not understand everything that I'm saying now because it may not make sense to you, but just think about it. Your hand and what you do with your hand is going to be recorded because you put your DNA and all your information, your spiritual energy into it's going to be recorded, versus something that you may be surveying or watching from a third party perspective. This is uh, this is essentially something that you will essentially capitalize off of as more of a credit. And this is the realm right now that most people function from. And this is where, at the same time, there's a great division happening because there are a lot of economies that kept up with the units of measurement coming from, units that were produced by their hands and their ancestors' hands, and they were able to turn that into an economy and into a bank, which is really interesting. So when you do rituals, these are what makes it interesting is that you are putting your effort and your hand into every unit that you produce. And even if you're a creative person, you may say, well, I don't do rituals. I don't really know what that is, but I'm just an artist and I draw pictures. Every picture that you're drawing, if you keep track of that as a form of a unit or a count, these are units that your hand owns. You have ownership in these particular numbers. And you can go and use these numbers if you were wise enough to have kept track. And you can still get back track, and that's where the hand comes in at, because you need a standard. Because, say, for instance, you forgot your count. There's a way for you to go into the stock market realm and regain your count back based on the weight of where you are at now. You can gain or gain a new count. It starts to count now, but essentially you have to count from what you make from your hand. For instance, if you haven't been counting, you can always go back in again and get you a new unit. And kind of like, it's almost like getting back in line, essentially. And you get you a new unit, and then you begin a new count. You just have to go in and do a new sample. And this will all make sense as I start making different videos. It'll start to make sense for you. So, for instance, you could even, if you're in a situation where you understand all of this, and then we go into next week. Say, for instance, you want to go ahead and follow the Bills versus the Packers, if the Bills and Packers play, or whoever's going to play next week. You could put your hand, your energy into that by watching that. Whatever the scores come out to be, based upon the rituals that you put together based upon both teams and whatever those units come out to be, you could figure out your hand or your number based upon all the creative projects and talents that you produce with your mind and your hand. And from that point, you could begin what's called a count and turn this into a bank account and a credit, because now you are accredited like a bond. A self-servant now. Self-servant, and then you can go out and draw credit off of what you produce with your hand, and then you can use these particular teams as a form of backing the scores, because